Anhörung des Angeklagten Klaus Eichelberger. Sie verzichten auf einen Anwalt und vertreten sich selber.
Ich weiß nicht, irgendwas.
Ho, ho, ho. Nun, Sie haben das Recht zu schweigen. Alles, was Sie sagen, kann und wird vor Gericht gegen Sie verwendet werden. Möchten Sie aussagen?
Ich sage aus.
Wir haben einige Anklagepunkte und Tatvorwürfe, zu denen ich Sie gerne befragen würde. Ha, ha, ha.
Wow, wow, wow.
Alright, so this is a companion piece to a blog I just published about the making of Pep oder Dinger. In this video I will pretty much just focus on the key learnings that I had while making it. So there is a lot to talk about, and for brevity's sake I will try to only include stuff which is not already in the written blog. If you want to know more, I would suggest you read the blog that I published on my website. Sounds good? Let's go. No great film was made by a lone genius. Collaboration is a filmmaker's most important skill. Yeah, I mean, it really is true. I really needed a lot of support, even though I tried to do everything I could on my own, pretty much, right? But this is like one of the key learnings, and I think it ties into the next learning as well, where each name in the credits at the end of a film is a person with a job. I now understand why credits are so long. Yeah, this really has been like an epiphany for me. There are a lot of unsung heroes in each movie credit, right? Like, it doesn't even do them justice that it's just a written name. And the worst thing is, if they do their job right, then you don't even notice that they did anything at all, right? So we're talking about the sound engineers, we're talking about the VFX guys and girls and whatever. Yeah, so it's really crazy. I remember watching a video about the VFX people behind the movie Life of Pi receiving their Oscar, and like the absolute disrespect for those people. And what they did is they I mean, I will link it in the description. What they did is they pretty much I think it's a tradition at the Oscars where they start playing the theme from Jaws as soon as the speech is too long, and they just started it immediately. And this was the biggest disrespect, because there's so many people and only let's say a handful of them can stand on stage, right? And even in this example of Life of Pi, this was a huge part of the movie, right? So I mean, really check it out and think about this more. I'm really not sure if credits do this justice at all. How else are you gonna like note that all the achievements of people in the process, right? And in the end, then you just have somebody like Tarantino or Nolan, where everybody thinks, oh, it's one person that did all of this, which, well, maybe it was under their direction, but the actual doing was not done by them, right? It was more about conveying the vision and collaborating with people. And yeah, I mean, this is why I felt this was really important to mention first, that, well, while I put my name to it, it's a work by multiple people, right? It does not need to be perfect, it just needs to exist. Yeah, this is a very key learning for myself, and I mean also for other people. If you try to be too perfectionist about things, then you will never finish stuff. And I mean, you really, for me, it was the goal to go through the whole process, and this also means finishing it. I mean, maybe now I can call myself a filmmaker, but before I wouldn't do that because, well, I didn't really publish anything. Bringing something to existence, there's always a struggle with it. There's a struggle in creating. When I wrote this script, I thought about a joke by, I believe it's Patton Oswalt, about the movie Deathbed, The Bad That Eats. It pretty much is this what it sounds like. It's a movie about a bat that eats people. And somebody had to struggle with this. Somebody had to get approval to actually film this. Somebody had to get a budget to do it. And they went through all of the steps, right? And this is not what you see. There is a struggle in making things happen. And it's kind of beautiful how Deathbed, The Bad Dad Eats, came into existence. And maybe other movies, other masterpieces did not. So I really like this fact. And also on a related note, and this is a trap I see a lot of people falling into, is that, you need to do the actual thing. If you say you're a writer, then you need to write. If you say you're a director or filmmaker, then you need to make movies. It's way easier to say that you're doing something than actually doing the thing. Sometimes you have to lose a battle to win the war. Pick your fights carefully. You can't fix it all in post. Yeah, I mean, I talk about it in the blog post that I also had this feeling after my first day of shooting with my friends that, well, it's not sharp at all, it's not stabilized, it's not even focused, right? It sucked. But then I went on for at least 3 years cutting this footage, right? Which, I mean, looking back, I'm still very happy that I finished it, but in terms of making a great movie, this is not, I should have picked other fights, right? Sometimes you just need to be done with something and just continue, just get something done, learn your lessons and then move on. But this is really hard, and it's also, I believe this is also part of the ego thing, right? Where you have this picture of yourself, like what you think you are and what you think you can do, and then it's put to the test of reality, and well, maybe you are not what you think you are, or you're not as good as you think you are. And that can be really frustrating. The inability of fixing everything in post, you have so much less work if you get the sound right before you go into the editing software. You will have a way better time color grading when you lit your picture nicely. And as a side note, you really need to finish your first film to finish the second one. There's no other way to do it. And finishing stuff is crucial. Any problem is always an opportunity to stray away from the obvious approach, escaping the cliché. Solving something your own way and making it work is the most rewarding feeling. The way that you solve a problem is part of your expression and part of your personality. How you solve something shows how your brain works. Nobody, for example, would make the same choices that I made making this movie. Every problem gives you an opportunity to be unique. It's not something negative that you have problems, just because there are very efficient ways of solving a problem or something that a lot of people have solved before. Trying to solve it in a very specific way, which is unique to you, is very rewarding if it works. But making it work is hard work. Work. It's okay to start with a cliché as long as it doesn't end up one. You still want to challenge your audience and show them something they have not seen before. And if they can guess what your story is going to be just after the first 15 minutes, then I think you didn't do a great job. The patterns of stories are all the same. Just the work of the writer is that you try to hide these story elements as good as you can and fill it with very specific details which are unique to what you are trying to make. Being specific is half the battle. As a writer, it's like tricking your brain and not taking on this burden of, oh, I have to write something good, but I just have to be very, very specific, or as specific as I can be. And then hopefully it resonates with other people. But for me, it's half the battle is just being specific and fleshing out the story as good as you can. Structure is not as important as you think. Tone and atmosphere are the real game. I did not think this was going to be the case, and this is mainly because most of my favorite movies are non-chronologically. Think of Memento, think of Pulp Fiction, just really great movies. But what I came to realize is they are not great movies because of their structure. The structure is a vehicle, but what is the real game and what people remember are the tone and the atmospheres of specific scenes. This is what you really need to work on. It's not about what you tell, it's about how you tell the story. Just because your script reads like a cheeky novel doesn't mean it translates well audiovisually. I put a lot of effort into my movie script for it to be readable. And I also read this with my friends and we had a lot of fun reading it, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to publish it. But what happens in cheeky novels is that there are a lot of internal things going on, where when you make a movie, audiovisually, hard word, you cannot always translate that. And something which is a really big moment written on the page, where there's a lot of detail in the real world, this might not translate at all and it might not be as big. One example for this is the scene in Pepper Dinger where Angelo and Bodo, they are drinking alcohol and they have these glass bottles, and I wrote it in the script like, oh, I thought this was going to be such a big action moment when they throw the bottle and it shatters on the ground, right? And then they did it and it wasn't anything. Like it didn't do anything for me, at least in the edit, and this was for me like, oh, I wanted to add action and there was no action to be seen at all. This is crazy. Okie dokie. Contrasts make things visible. Consistency blends everything together. You choose when to apply both. Don't let inability or randomness do it for you. There are different ways to achieve contrast and consistency, and I would argue most of a movie's runtime is spent in consistency, which means you enter this flow where you don't even notice things and it's just like the movie flows along. But what you as a filmmaker are trying to do is point out specific things or interrupt these rhythms, right? And this can be achieved in different ways. For example, with color, if you have something super in a really shiny red on screen, then eyes are gonna focus on this, right? This you have to use on purpose. If you don't use this on purpose, and there's just randomly a red thing and it distracts from what you are actually trying to tell, then this is your inability to tell the story properly. Another example is with audio quality or resolution. It's not as important that the resolution is perfect in every single picture, but what is important is that it's the same. And if it's not the same, it's a contrast, right? So one of them is going to make it flow and the other one is going to interrupt your pattern. And this you should use. This is not something which randomness should decide for you. Good audio and stabilized images are like 80% of what a general audience considers professional filmmaking. This is something you kind of pick up on when you see bad footage that you shot, right? Yeah, once more, everything you try to do has to be on purpose. If it's not on purpose, but it still works, that's also fine, but then never tell anybody it wasn't on purpose. Audio is 50% of your movie. You will learn this the hard way. You don't only see a movie, you also hear a movie. And I, for sure, spent more money on the visual equipment than I did on the audio equipment. Let this be the one time I say it again, and I wrote it like 3 times, I wrote it in the blog. Invest more in audio. Mastering lighting is probably the biggest challenge when using a camera. Shadows and reflections are my enemies. Yep, it is true. And this is something where the small display you have on a camera might not be as useful as you think it is. Once you watch a shot image on a bigger display, then you notice all of these things. The microphone or the camera, or yourself as the cameraman, you always throw a shadow. And if you're not aware of lighting, this can break the immersion, or you have to fix it in post, which is not optimal, as I said before. One example I can give for this is the scene where Zayn leaves Zamedi's house. There are a lot of cars around and all of them are super shiny. I have no idea how I avoided not being in the reflection. This was not on purpose at all, and I was very happy. On set there's so much going on, and thinking about reflections, thinking about shadows is not the first priority. In the end you just want your actors to perform, you want to show and direct emotions of the actors, but still there's the technical part of it. So yeah, this is a learning. Alright, the last technical learning, which is just because you spend a lot recording a scene doesn't mean it has to end up in the final film. Be brave and cut for the story's sake. Yeah, I mean, imagine you spend 50% of your budget, like $1 million on one scene, to shoot one scene, but in the edit you kind of see like, oh, this does not work, this doesn't serve my story at all. Should you still include it, or should you just be brave and cut it out? And I would argue cut it out. It's not really economical to do this. And I mean, what about filmmaking is economical at all? But still, and ideally this situation doesn't happen because you do the planning before and you spend more money on the big moments than on the small moments, which might not even end up in the final film. I also feel like, and I mentioned this in the blog, in the written blog, you should never write a scene which you are not keen on shooting, or you are not keen on investing money into, that you want to shoot it. If a scene does not pass this test, then you have to rewrite it. Even in my movie, there are a lot of things that I purchased or that I created which did not make the final cut. For example, the garden gnome that I created. I mean, you can see it here. I made this. I colored it, I bought stuff, I made it with a papier-mâché. I'm not sure how this translates. Anyway, I made this. I also created the gym bag that you see like briefly in the movie, and this was going to be my big thing that you that the whole movie is centered around, and I spent a lot of time creating it, drawing, creating the pattern, then transferring it. It's a mess. During this whole process, my respect for a lot of people has increased, but also decreased for others. It has increased for the people that do the jobs which are not really all that visible, and also for the people that are super creative in their problem solving and trying to find new ways and actually setting out to do something even though it's risky and you might fail. And on the other hand, it has decreased for the people which just follow the formula, follow solution approaches which are written down in a guidebook somewhere, and this is how you light a scene, and there's no creative process in like mechanical filmmaking this way. Like overcoming these challenges in a unique way is super important, as I mentioned before. And some people just avoid this for safety's sake. Let's be honest here, how high is the probability that you're gonna make a new masterpiece? Even movies by Kubrick, when they first came out, people did not appreciate them, right? And so the payoff is very delayed. So might as well have fun exploring while you have the chance of doing the thing. And then maybe in 20 years people think, oh, what a masterpiece, I wonder how he did it. But then it's already too late for yourself, right? You put this thing out into the world and then it's out of your hands. And this is how I think you should handle it. I do also believe there is a place for imperfect movies, where as long as you feel that the creator or the creators and the collaborators put their heart and soul into it, it's like a different energy to a piece of art. And this is part of the process which you usually don't see. You don't see how somebody was struggling with this for years and years, but you only see the final product. You don't see like overcoming all the challenges in the technical challenges or the story challenges, you just see the final product. In terms of future projects, The first thing is a much smaller scope, which ideally also leads to more frequent output. The second thing is film might not be the only medium where I publish my stories. I still really like film, just for the fact of it's so much easier for you to watch my movie than for me to get you to read my book. So it's a very immediate medium, but it might not be the only one. Yeah, and the third one is to improve my weaknesses. This is not only about directing, but in general through other projects and explorations. If you know how to improve the technical sides or even the story things of what I made, of course, just feel free to message me. And yeah, let's see if this could be a very interesting collaboration, right? So yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you made it till the end. Have fun, enjoy life, and bye bye.
Ich will euch doch nur helfen!